today's video, we'll look at a scenario in which we continue the alternate future of the World Series. And well, World War IX has begun as the Green Alliance declared war on the world defense. And then the Purple Alliance declared war on everyone. And don't forget their puppets. Great. I forgot about their puppets. Their puppets. Probably did have them colored in, I'm pretty sure. Well, why did the purple team come into existence? Well, they kind of wanted to do something. Well, quickly while the Blue Alliance is getting ready for this, they take over. And they start developing new weapons. And those weapons might lead us into Season 5. Who's to know? There's going to be a big change. These two nations fall, with the North Africa front beginning, and then followed by the Middle East's front. Them moving over here, with this neutral nation declaring war, believing it's a way they could gain land out of this, so they declare war on the blue team. As they quickly make big advances. With quickly, both the Red Alliance moves troops in so they can quickly take over Arabia before they can unify forces. Well, quickly Arabia's overran. And well, on this front, well, the blue side isn't having fun on this front. As they're getting their butt kicked around. Well, don't just do this. They start two fronts on the Red Alliance, as they quickly occupy this area. And them promising this area land if they join. Oh great, this isn't great. This is not good. Now it's fixed. As they continue their offensive into Europe. But the blue team sees an opportunity to take land. They decide to take a success in the Philippines and use it to try to persuade some of the new countries here to join. Managed to do it with the two Western republics. And not only that, but seeing this, the Texan Republic decides to do something. And the Neo-Confederate States, with the Union deciding to join back into this. And well, this country decides to join in. Quickly, they manage to escalate in this front, with a lot of the nations feeling threatened that surrounds the Quebec nation. Yes, France's ally in the New World. But the red team gets an advantage on this front, simply because they are the ones that were ready and probably planning on it. And well, these two nations decide to launch invasions into key areas against these nations. This nation manages to take one city, two cities, a few cities, and they start moving over here. But with this nation, the nations around it were ready, so they don't do well. With them getting pushed back in the southern areas, and then eventually in the northern areas. Quickly, they are forced into capitulation. And while the federal government here decides to start an invasion here. What a surprise. Well, they also invade from the south. Take this nation out. I'm taking out 2 nations in this area. They're getting rid of the smaller ones, realistically. Like, by size, not by anything else. And they also moved over here. Despite this one being much bigger, it's not as strong. So, Canadian forces use both sides of this frontier to move in. In a matter of weeks, this front ends up like this. And then they decide to use the campaign for the liberation of Japan. With the purple team struggling on one front, they're now struggling on the other. Quickly, a bit of a break in most of the fighting occurs between the red countries on the red team and the blue team. With them racing to see who can capture the most area. Yes, that's exactly what they do. They manage to re-liberate a big chunk of their land. Well, they continue their invasion to the north. Quickly, this nation is overran and forced to collapse, which leads to them using this to take more land, with them managing to take out a few puppets. No countries yet. As they take this, it looks like they're set to move in and capture the most land, as the puppets are withdrawn from due to issues with supplying it. And well, they managed to take out their First Nation, but an invasion has started in the Korean Peninsula by the Blue Alliance, with the southern Siberia state deciding to join, hoping it can gain lands from what would be Mongolia and what is Manchuria and was theirs. With them managing to occupy this land, quickly they take over this land, and the Red Line still hasn't got past this line. They are still heading towards entering it, but not as fast. And because of that, more invasion points are chosen to be used. One in the Himalaya, which doesn't make sense. One in the south, and a naval landing over here. And this nation just starts its own arm. And they move in. Quickly, these two fronts connect. And well, they manage to push through here. And then they start pushing into here. With both sides planning. With this nation losing its capital, and then its ability to fight crumbles. So they surrender. And quickly after, the fronts become like this. With these 4 being occupied, and with the united, more unified team taking a bigger chunk of land. But not much fighting breaks up on that front yet. And well, supplies are getting into the British Isles still, which isn't good. Well, is good, but isn't good for the red team. And well, they push down into Morocco. They also make a landing in Tunisia. And they start a campaign into Egypt, as they call this the North Africa campaign. This quickly becomes a major front, with them quickly starting to take control So there's not really much resistance. With them holding on in the desert to the shock of this team. But they decide to invade over here to make it hard for supplies to get in. And they also move in over here, with them eventually landing and taking these lands before they're held back for a bit. Before this happens, they push back. And then these nations decide to do that, which is good. With the Siberian states all joining in, believing they can be unified after this. So they unify together, which this team is not a big fan of. But they just don't say anything whether they agree with the idea or not. Seeing the disastrous North Europe campaign, not North Europe, British Isles campaign, they end up doing the Ethiopian campaign, which is the African campaign, the East African campaign. And quickly they manage to overrun it, with them using this to overrun the Sudan part of Egypt, which leads to them going up the Nile. Egypt, Sudan is quickly forced into surrender, with the land that surrender being captured right after. With them using this to move into the desert. And well, this allows them to push back over here. Eventually, the front in this area looks like this, with this nation joining with the goal of forming Russia again. With the Red Empire thinking of different things. One they come up with is to disrupt the fronts by creating a basically weather controlling machine. Let's see if they can do that. But only temporary. Well, they think that's what's going to happen if they can do it. But who knows? With them moving forces into the northern front, which is over here. With them moving into this area, and now they take over the Baltics. France is not enjoying this, so they push back. With the North African Union finally having to surrender as this country gets destroyed, and failure to reoccupy it after their surrender happened, which led to Morocco crumbling, because a lot of the forces in the North African Empire decided to switch sides. And yeah, as the African Union is crumbling, as it's being questioned whether this is even worth it by both sides to continue. But both sides decide to continue. As in the northern front, they manage to move into Ukraine, so they're starting to create an eastern front. It's them taking Crimea and their front line being just like this. With them unable to advance any further south. But in this front, they decide to do this, leading to a huge withdrawal, even leading them to getting a victory over it by continuing. With them advancing over here to create panic in the front, and as forces start withdrawing, they use this to their advantage to push them down to here. But one front is definitely failing, there's no question about it. With this area is being forced to surrender. And well, with Nigeria ending up in capitulation, same with Cameroon. With them taking over here, the East Africa Union, to do this. And they start an advance in northern Congo to continue this trend. And then they move in, taking out Malawi. And with this front being a big failure, basically. And they almost encircle most of the area here, leading to panic. Which leads to a bit of success. Until they get to here, where it's realized, really, not much. And then they take over Madagascar. And well, this is not good for them. With a lot of troops withdrawing from the Africa front for some reason. And them pulling a bunch of forces back. And well, this is what it looks like. With Bulgaria finally deciding to break its shell and launch rebellion against the nations that stole their land a few wars earlier. Quickly, they get troops into there through the other fronts. And this is what they decide to campaign here to reach to help the Bulgarian cause. And they quickly take Istanbul. And well, and they manage to do this. With them splitting the front using Bulgaria as a way to do it. With Bulgaria pushing a bit more and then it being held off. With this front being really going bad. Along with this area. Into some of its areas. And while the Arabia Peninsula front starts becoming bad as well, they get pushed back to here. With them starting to think, what can they do? They think of making weapons to change the flooding, create floods. They think of ones to drop temperatures. They think of anything that could work. Could remotely work. They think of it all. Nobody knows they're doing this. And there's no evidence they can find. Yet. Because all in a secure area, basically. With them liberating the Arabian Peninsula, and then they go for the rest, which is an invasion here. This front down there doesn't really matter if they lose all of this front. They start to realize. And well, they're not going to be defeated soon. So they continue work on the weapon. And they decide to go ahead with a weapon that can drop temperatures. But what they think will happen is that it will go well. Well, you'll see in the next video. With this being the front lines now. And they managed to push all the way to here. With the weakening of the forces. Well, a massive stalemate breaks out and they finally create this weapon. Tune in for the next episode to see if they actually use it, because that would be important. So please like, subscribe, and comment. Wild Mapper out, and until you subscribe. Bye, guys!